Hey there, everybody. It's Mike Yao again, with Savage Kingdoms role-playing game and Fire in the Head Productions. With my mug here, one of my many mugs, Medieval Times is that one. Pretty cool. So yeah, I thought I'd do a video today not based on, the subject being player buy-in. I'll probably come up with a better title, but that's basically what it's about. And some of you on YouTube world probably seen other videos with game masters and game designers and players talking about this kind of thing. I think some of that's out there. I've watched a little bit of it. It seems pretty good. Thought I'd just add my own two compa pieces, as it were, to the discussions. So what does player buy-in mean? So basically, I don't know, maybe a better title is player buy-in when you're starting a new campaign. So starting at session 0. So buy-in, right? Player buy-in. What does that mean? All right. So number one is respecting the GM's world, the game master's world or setting, and respecting. And then I guess 1B would be respecting the game system. But I think that's a given. So if you're invited to play Dungeons and Dragons or Savage Kingdoms or Numenera or whatever, Savage Worlds or whatever, you know in your head that's like, okay, that's because that's the name of the system, the game system. So you know that, oh yeah, Dungeon Crawl Classic, sure, that sounds kind of cool. Or I don't really know about that. So at least you know what the system is. But sometimes you don't know what the setting is unless the setting is part of the system, which in some cases it is, such as Deadlands or Numenera, which I just mentioned. Those are systems and settings that are tied together. Savage Kingdoms, my tiny little game is the same. I mean, you could use the Savage Kingdoms system, the X20 system as I call it, to run other stuff, but it's really tied to the system, much like the other ones I mentioned, and many others as well. So the buy-in really comes with respecting the game master's world. And what does that really actually mean? Obviously, hopefully you're being somewhat respectful, right? It's probably somebody you know, or maybe you're playing at a game convention, maybe someone you don't know, but as a normal human being, civilized, mature human being, hopefully you're still bringing some level of respect to the game table, right? So it's kind of a given. But the deeper meaning of that is, so some players will try, and we've all done this. Younger gamers, even some older gamers, I mean, it just happens, where they're really trying to shoehorn, they really want to play this type of character, and the game master says it doesn't fit the setting, doesn't fit my setting, and may not even really fit the overall the game system, really, actually. Might not support it that well. But mainly it doesn't really fit the setting, the game master's world. So that's what it means respecting. It's like if it's like, and at session 0, when everybody's sitting down to sort of discuss what type of campaign, what kind of stories and themes you might be exploring in your tabletop role-playing game, hopefully that comes up. It should come up. The game master will share his or her version of the setting, if it's not a known setting. If it's a known setting, you don't really have to go much over. If you're playing in the Hyborian Age of Conan, super cool setting. You probably don't need to explain it, unless people have never really read Conan or even watched the 1982 movie, which is underrated. So they're probably familiar with it through pop culture, which is fine, but it's a little deeper than that. You really have to read the original Robert E. Howard sagas. And again, watch the 1982 movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger, because it really, even though it's an amalgamation of several stories, it's a really good feel. The feel and the grit and the color palette and everything, to me, is really spot on. Completely underrated. Basil Palladorus' score, however, is perfectly rated. In other words, it's super high rated, and for a very good reason. Anyway, that's my little Hyborian Age tangent. So the original, what I was saying was that unless you're not familiar with the setting through pop culture, then the game master needs to explain it. Spend 2, 3, 4 minutes, maybe a little handout. I wouldn't give any more information out than a page, maybe 2. I've made the mistake in the past where I did this whole campaign folder with 20, 30 pages that I expected the player characters to read, and as I've gotten older and look back, I'm like, nah, they didn't read that. They read some of it, probably. In fact, I know some of the players actually did read a decent amount of it because they were good people and very interested, but Most probably read a page or two, and I don't blame them. So yeah, so just give them a page or two handout. Better yet, discuss face-to-face or through email or texting or Discording or Zooming or whatever the thing is nowadays with the social distancing. In some ways, communicate what the setting is and what it's kind of about. The Game Master wants to leave some level of mystery, obviously, and let the players explore the world, but remember, their characters were born in the setting, and probably, say if they're starting out, their character's 20 years old, they've already spent 20 years in their world, so obviously they would know some basic stuff about it. So make sure you get that out. So that way there's no disrespect, or right off the bat, like if the player is like, and I've run into this a couple times in the past, and I was nice about it, and I played anyway, but the Game Master was describing the setting or some ideas, and there was I was being nice and nodding and going along, but there was part of my brain going like, man, I don't know if I can connect with this, but I'll try it. And in one instance that I didn't think I would, and I did, and it didn't run very long, the campaign, but it lasted a decent while. It was pretty good actually. So just kind of know what you're getting into to a degree. So using that Conan example again, let's go back to that since I established that one. Hyborian Age is technically the name of that world. 10,000 years BC, right after the sinking of Atlantis, etc., blah, blah, blah. So say you're running a campaign in that setting. Maybe you're even running the actual Conan role-playing game by, is it Modiphius? Or maybe it's the old Mongoose game that I used to run some. And you can't say, I want to build this character. I want to play a halfling that rides on a lizard or something, because that doesn't actually, a giant lizard actually, weirdly enough, does kind of fit the setting, but not as a halfling certainly does it, and a halfling lizard rider probably doesn't either. So just know that you're or if you're running what's Eberron, this I'm not my favorite setting, but a lot of people love it. It's very popular. So if you're running Eberron and you're trying to bring in like a more gritty, grounded sword and sorcery character, it's probably not going to really fit because you got all the magic tech stuff flying around. So just kind of know the setting that you're running in. There's countless other incidents. So respect the Game Master's world once he or she establishes it, or you go with it. In other words, create a character that fits the setting. You will have a far better time that way, and so will the Game Master. There won't be any clashing of heads. You'll enjoy the fact that, and just remember that like some people forget that a Game Master is just a human who's also there to have fun, right? So why? I feel like some players push back because they're like, oh, the Game Master is clearly kind of trying to control what we do, and it's like, well, yeah, to a degree, because there needs to be a director of every production. But remember, that person is there also to do this thing, and they actually have a bigger job than you do. No offense to player characters, but sorry, it's true. So be respectful. There's no reason for why a normal person would be like, I'm going to create this campaign and make it ridiculously terrible where nobody wants to play it. I'll show them. That kind of thing doesn't exist 99.9% of the time. So just be respectful. So point number 2, it kind of plays off of that point number 1 of being respectful. So it's called meeting halfway. So negotiation, diplomacy is a part of life. It's actually how politics are supposed to work. Sadly, they don't seem to do that anymore. It's a negotiation. You meet in the middle. It's an ancient thing that humans have done. So applying it to this situation, the Game Master has an idea for a campaign. A player character is like, yeah, but can I do this kind of thing? I know it's not quite part of the setting. It doesn't really quite fit, but maybe. And you can negotiate and go, kind of meet in the middle and say, the Game Master might go, and I've done this many times, like, yeah, I can work with that. We can sort of meet in the middle. We'll use your basic concept and apply it to the setting, and we'll sort of make it work. And even if it has to be that rare, the easy way out is like you're that rare character, that one, that last member of a dying tribe. An example of the halfling lizard rider, you might even allow that. And the halfling may actually really just be a stunted human, that people call halfling. Or whatever. So the point is, you're meeting in the middle. It's like, yes, I'm accepting the halfling lizard rider. In the setting, it doesn't have it, so in order to make it work, we're going to meet in the middle, and we'll make it happen some way. So yeah, so meeting halfway is a good thing. Compromise. Yep, makes the world go around, makes civilization go around. Number 3, be an active participant in the story. So how does this apply to player buy-in? Well, I'm about to tell you that. Being an active participant in the story, and participant. So I could do a whole different video on this, and probably maybe I should have, but this is how it fits in a player buy-in and player and game master buy-in, is that if you're bought into the campaign and you're playing this character, take an active role in it. I mean, this seems obvious, but sometimes it does, and a lot of players will sit back, and that's fine. Some people's personality types are like that. But they're almost expecting, I see this a lot too, and I get a little frustrated. They're expecting like something to fall in their laps. It's like, well, create your character with enough detail, with enough motivation to go seek adventure, to go seek something, instead of always allowing the game master to do that. So the reason I put this in the player buy-in video is because it kind of is. You're kind of buying in. So I'm going to play in this game master's campaign setting. Sounds awesome. But I'm also willing to take, the thing about social contracts are discussed nowadays in modern RPGs. And I agree with some of that. I don't think there's any necessary for mature, civilized humans to literally write out a contract amongst friends playing a game around the table. But there is an unspoken contract regardless. And that's one of them. It's like that. Just let that be part of the unspoken contract. You're sitting at the table playing a player character, and it's called a player character for a reason, because it is a character controlled by a player. You're expected to to participate. Now, if you're that type of person that's really shy, or you're new at the game and you're sitting back and just kind of watching and just kind of responding, that's fine. But don't let it be a habit. Some players will claim after 20 characters that's my character's personality. He reacts. He never really acts. And it's like, but we've seen that with like the last 20 characters. So clearly it's maybe a player thing instead of a character thing. So yeah, just be a little more active. It helps the game master, and it helps the rest of the table out. And it shows respect to the setting and to the system. Number 4. This is another video in and of itself that I might do at some point for all 7 people watching. This is don't overwrite, or even overrate. Don't overrate your backstory. This is as a player. I see this fairly often, and it's good on one level because if it's good writing, because some of the players I play with are good writers, and you're like, wow, this is like a really cool short story. This is a 7-8 page, not 10-page thing. But here's the drawback with that. There's 2 major reasons that's a problem, and those of you probably already know what it is, but I'm going to hash them out anyway. There's really 2 major problems. Number 1 is the obvious, kind of what I just said. It's a 10-page backstory. We only have so much time in our life. Game Master's already doing a lot of props too, might be making props too. A lot of preparation. Looking at other character backstories, which also might be wordy. And again, they might be entertaining, but suddenly after you've read 40 pages of character backstories, you've not wasted, but you've used an hour of what could have been preparation time, or walking the dog time, or exercise time, or whatever, time. So don't overwrite it, because don't make it so wordy. But that's not even the main thing. Number 2 to me is the main thing, and a lot of people, I haven't heard really anybody talk about this. The biggest pet peeve. Don't write you're playing a beginning character. This is assuming a first level, first advancement, whatever the system is, or second, it's still a starting character. If you're writing a 10 to 12 page detailed story, you already told most of the character's story already, and a lot of the backstory will contain all these events, all these cool things that the character did, and then it makes you wonder, like, why is this person first advancement? They've done all these incredible deeds. So yeah, for some reason that gets lost for some reason. Yeah, it seems kind of like a no-brainer, but I don't know. Maybe it's not, since it's seen fairly often. But yeah, so don't overwrite. I know, which is great. I know you're excited about your character, and you're like, oh man, I'm going to write all this cool stuff you did. But remember, it's like, the reason you're playing is because you're about to tell the main story. So the backstory should only be just some basic things. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, it's there literally is a background that you choose, and I think it's a little simplistic, but it's actually a good tool to kind of start off of, and you can write around that. This is what you were doing in general, probably some more stuff before you are your class. Savage Kingdoms, we have callings, which are similar to classes but not as restrictive. And then there are social talents that often represent your background, and you can start with as many as 3 or 4, I believe. You have to start with at least 1. So those talents in and of themselves already kind of tell you like your basic background, what you're doing and maybe still actively doing as well as part of your adventuring career, as well as what your race, where you grew up and stuff. So yeah, so just, in other words, most of the backstory is already there on the character sheet. If you need to fill in a couple more pages or 2, which you should, that's great. Just don't get super carried away. The PC's player character story is coming. That's why you're around the table. If you've already done it, then, right, what's the point? Okay. So number 5, and I think this is the last one I have written down. Number 5, gel with fellow players. So this kind of goes back to 1, like respecting, but this is like everybody. So number 5, gel with the fellow players. In other words, buy in, because this video is about player buy-in. Buy in with all the other players around the table. So going back to the start of this video of the player buy-in thing, respecting the GM, we've established that. You've already like, okay, cool, I'm going to create this character. I'm even going to maybe read a page or 2 about the GM's back, or at least listen to it for a couple minutes about his or her setting. And so that sounds cool, or I'll make it cool, and I'm going to make this character to blend. And so I'm respecting the game master, and I'm going to meet him halfway. Maybe he's respecting me also. Maybe he's going to meet me halfway, and we're going to figure this thing out together about a character concept. So number 5 is about everybody else around the table, because sometimes this gets forgotten as well. So remember, there are 4 other people, or 3, or just 2, or maybe 8 other people around the table with you. They've decided to take that night off to do one of their favorite things, and that's to play a tabletop role-playing game and to share a collective story. And that right there tells you what I mean by that. So it is a collective story, as in a collection of people collaborating. So let it be known that the game master is he's the director. I've as an actor, I've established these titles before. You can look at it as game master, as the director, stage manager, maybe the lead writer, and the supporting actor. But the player characters are the lead actors, and maybe they're part of the writing group as well. You hear that a lot nowadays, and a lot of older television programs, you had 1, maybe 2 writers. Nowadays, you tend to have a team, which is, if you can afford it, a writers group. They get together once a week, and they actually hash out the episode. And it's really cool. I think it's cool that way, because it's collaborative, and you're drawing from different brains instead of your own. You might have a cool idea about something, and yeah, maybe you're like still the primary person on that subject, but if you start brainstorming with 3 other people, 4 other people in a room, then suddenly you're like, wow, I never thought about that, or that's really cool, or the thing I thought was they're going to add to it, or maybe take away from it because that was a little too much. So you're just all kind of banging, kind of pinging off back and forth off each other. So yeah, so that's what the gel with the other players. So buy in with your fellow player characters at the table or at the virtual table on Roll20 or Zoom or whatever, Google Hangouts, whatever. So yeah, so make sure you buy in with them. Be respectful of their characters. And oh yeah, and just a caveat to that, I guess this is 5B. It means gel with your fellow players, not necessarily with their characters. So right? So we're sitting down with Barbara and Tim and Jimmy and whoever, and maybe you're probably friends, or maybe you're your acquaintances. Maybe it's at a convention, you don't know these people at all, but they're still human beings that are still spending 4 hours around the table or whatever. So yeah, you want to be nice to them, right? But maybe your characters, you don't necessarily have to gel with the characters. Having said that, it is a trap to make, this is the stereotype in gaming that a lot of people sort of talk about all the time. It's the lone wolf. I'm the lone guy with the cloak, and I don't say anything, and I rarely come into town, and I brood in the background. And that's, and the thing is, like, that's great on paper, because I've done those characters before, and then suddenly when you get in a social setting, which is the game itself, the collective group, suddenly not as fun anymore. You could still... A really good role player / actor can pull that off if they're talking more in third person or describing what their character is doing. Is if you're playing the lone wolf who doesn't talk much, it might seem like you can't talk much at the table. That's actually not true. You'll have to talk more as a narrator. You'll have to talk more in third person. However, again, just be careful of the brooding lone wolf who doesn't. I don't connect to anything. I just sort of stay in the background. I'm Batman, although I'm far less interesting. So just beware of those characters. Or if you want to create a character like that, like I said, be prepared to speak more in third person. But to add on to that, I would say add a few other personality traits to that kind of character. Add a couple more talents that are not part of the general core of the character or whatever the game system is, a feat or something. So yeah, maybe you stay with the core of that character, but think about what you need to do to kind of break that mold a little bit. Add a couple of another dimension or two to him, and be prepared again to speak more in third person. Meaning that instead of dialogue, it's like I walk up to the tavern keeper and I slip him a silver coin. I pull the cowl of my hood back and I ask him this question, and then maybe you literally play out asking the question, or maybe you third person it. So yeah, that's a little side note there for player buy-in. I think I covered everything, including some little minor tangents, but that always happens. Yeah, all right, so to go over and really quickly, so I went over 5 points. Really, there's probably like 8, but 5. Player buy-in. So respect the GM and the game master setting and world, and respect the system, which really is all kind of the same thing. Number 2, meet halfway. So the game master and player character can meet halfway, so you're both buying in on each other. I mean, the player ultimately is buying in with the game master, obviously, because he is the game master. But the game master should meet both ways because you're all part of the collective team, right? Number 3, being an active participant in the story. So meaning, bring your A game if you can. Bring make the character be interested and do something and have goals and motivation instead of waiting for the plot device to drop into your lap. Because the way I run games personally, and my players will probably know this, like I don't do I don't play video games actually, so I don't, or computer games that much, so I don't really know what there's the plot guy with the I play more narrative, like an actual story or novel, meaning that everything's not going to be obvious. You may have to work for things, and I'll give people 3 or 4 different rumors they've heard of, and then sometimes they get confused, like, well, which one does he want us to follow? It's like, it's not me wanting to follow. You guys are the player characters, right? You're the ones that are supposed to be active participants. So if you've developed your character, at least to a degree, you should know, like, what would that character want to do? Maybe he's not interested in saving those children, or maybe he's not interested in going to war for this kingdom he's barely heard of, or whatever. So, or maybe he wants to do those things. So yeah, being an active participant in the story. Number 4, don't overwrite your backstory. So I think I covered that pretty good. Don't hand in a dozen pages to the game master, even though you're an awesome writer, which a lot of people are, because to go over it really quick again, 1, it's a lot of stuff to read, but the big thing to me is 2, or B, A, whatever. 2. Point number 2, within point number 4 is you're already writing your character out of the story. You've already told your character story if it's a giant short story. So remember, it's probably a low level character, and the story is coming in front of you. You're just supposed to tell it's the reason it's called a backstory. It's not a current story or a forestory. So last thing, number 5, was gel with your fellow players, meaning just respect everyone at the table, the game master, but also the other players. You don't necessarily have to gel with their characters, but gel with the players. Remember, they're there for a reason too. They're trying to play a compelling story. Also, they're trying to get whatever it is they want out of the game, which is just either escapism or creativity. Maybe they're interested in mythology and history stuff. I myself am. Everybody plays for different reasons. I think most people just think it's just, we're just here to have fun, and you are here to have fun. But remember, there are different degrees of fun. There are different types of fun. Some people are really looking for inspiration, maybe to write their next novel. Some people just literally want escapism, like, dude, it was a rough day. I just want to sit down and roll some dice. Maybe it's people like to explore other characters. Maybe they're actors and they're exploring this character and this world that they're going through. So yeah. All right, so that was a summary of everything. So that's player buy-in. thanks to you guys for listening and tuning in, all 8 of you. Hopefully there'll be more in the future. And the Indiegogo is still going. We're a weekend. We're doing okay. It's kind of petered off. I'm getting slightly concerned about it, but there's 3 weeks left, so I think we'll be fine. But anyway, more importantly, stay safe and stay sane out there, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye.